use the techniques, not just see them and actually work on some images, or at least I work on them, but you give me the suggestions of what to do. So we'll do that as part one. The second part is the beginnings of the new features or the new format in Adobe Camera Raw. And I will not only show you some of the features, and I think this will be a couple weeks that we will go through those the features, and there are some new features, but the format of Adobe Camera Raw is entirely different than what it was. The new format came out in June this year, and Adobe Camera Raw, as you'll see when we go through some of the work, the samples, is where I go first to do a lot of editing and then come back into Photoshop to finish the editing. I'll also say that as I've been talking to a lot more people who use Photoshop, I know a lot about Photoshop, but my use of it is to produce a final image presentation. The technique used, or the tools that I use within Photoshop, are not as important to me as the end result. And what I mean by that is I don't need to have the fanciest technique to do something. And in Photoshop, there are more than one ways to come up with the same result. For me, the result is the most important thing. And I also, in Photoshop, there are a lot of aspects of history that can be captured in Adobe Camera Raw. And you can have something in Photoshop called, I can't think of the name now, but it saves all of the changes you're doing for each layer. I don't usually do those levels of sophistication because if I'm changing something later, they're really subtle changes. I don't really need to go back and do major changes to an image because I'm also starting out other images to work on. So my whole approach is somewhat simple techniques, and the end result is the most important to me, not how we get to the end result. And I only add to that when I was doing wet darkroom work, I used the techniques called dodge and burn, and you had to do a number of things to do that in the darkroom. And now in what I call the dry darkroom, I use dodge and burn a lot. It is destructive in the sense that once you do it, you can't go back when you bring that image back in. That doesn't bother me at all because I do it in a way that I build it up slowly and have it what I want finished in the image. And if I want to change that later and I go back in, it's very easy to use those tools to do it. There are much more sophisticated ways to doing those, but I tend to use very easy approaches to doing my work. But let's start with images that we were doing the last class, where you will make suggestions of how you think it should be changed or modified, enhanced. I will do them and offer some suggestions also, but it's a good way to enforce what you've learned over the last previous classes and to get some idea of why something would change in a certain way. Then I'll go into Adobe Camera Raw. So I'll share my screen and we will get into some images here. You can see my Photoshop screen?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I wanted to start with this image, which is not something we will modify, but I want to start with it because it has a special meaning to me. Bring it up. This is on paper that I got out of a photographic journal many, many years ago, and I had it in my darkroom, on the wall in the darkroom. And of course, it's very amusing image, but I kept it in my darkroom and in regards to my photography for this reason. You see what he's painting and you see what he's seeing. And it is a perfect example of photography should be what you, as the photographer, see in your mind's eye from the actual scene that you are photographing, and you are producing that end result based on the technique and tools and things that you have. So you're looking at the real world and presenting it in your way. That's what this reminds me of. I think it's so good. Then I want to show you this. We had this one in the last week, and Michael Birnbaum, well, I'll just do it because he did it this way. Michael Birnbaum sent it to me, and he had duplicated it and flipped it and put it together. I thought, how cool was that? That was one of the techniques we had learned. So I was thinking of just showing you his, but let's go through it again so you get the idea. Here's the layer. You can duplicate the layer. So I have two layers identical. The top layer, I want to flip horizontally, but you don't go to image and transform, flip, or edit. You go to edit, transform, flip horizontal, because when you have multiple layers, didn't do it. When you have multiple layers, you need to be able to flip just that layer.
Oh.
And this is how you flip only a single layer. It's edit, transform, flip horizontal. So now the top layer has been flipped, the bottom layer is not. If I turn the top layer off, you see the bottom layer. I go up to image, canvas size, and I'll double the width, make it 32, 33. You can make it 34 and see what we get. Put it to one direction. Get the move tool. Yeah, it's actually, I didn't flip it. Get the move tool and move this out. And I want to flip this one, not this one. Yes. Why am I not getting this? It just, wow. I apologize, folks.
Welcome to our world.
Oh, wow.
Exactly what I was thinking, Lynn.
There we go. So,
Oh, wow.
so this is what Michael did with that. I thought, how creative. And that was a technique we had learned once before, the two images, and then you crop off the extra amount. And I thought, what a neat effect that had. Also, I hadn't thought about doing it to this one, but remember to do those kinds of things. And I'll click on the move tool, click on the upper layer, and just move it in a little tighter to have the two come together correctly. And crop that extra little piece off. Really is a very creative look, isn't it, from the original image? If we come back and just look at one side of it and then look at the two put together.
Looks like he's looking through goggles. It's really cool.
Yes, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's very
we
cool.
did some additional things to this. I'll go to layers, flatten the image so that the two are now combined into one image. Turn off the lock of that layer. Don't need to, but I always turn them off so I can use all the tools that I want. And I'll take it into Adobe Camera Raw just to do a little bit of a enhancement of the image. My favorite is to use in the basic tab the dehaze slider, as it brings more drama to the skies. Close the basic slider and come down to the color mixer. Click on the targeted adjustment tool. And I'll go through this when we go through the ACR, the Adobe Camera Raw second part today. And I'll select luminance and hold it in there and just darken that sky a bit. And see the difference? I think it's important to
Yeah.
think about, always about how highlights and shadows work within the image to bring it out more. See the difference here
Mhm.
to here? Much more three-dimensional. This is flat. Even though that was really a neat looking image, it's flat. This creates more three-dimensionality. Okay. Okay, let me bring up the first image that I would like you to think about and make recommendations of how to change it, what to do with it.